We sort of complained about it for a while, but our kids love it here. And and then as Ben had people that he met kids from coming from other places, it was his city and he got to show them. So then, we'd find out he was at the beach or they were going on little road trips.
He told us about a couple museums we didn't know about. He's introduced us to a few restaurants we didn't know about. So our worry of having that, not having that small town kind of went away.
And then there's everybody has this worry, but you're like, is anybody going to like my kid? Like, is my kid going to have friends? Is he going to have community? And I remember it was like 3 weeks in and he came in, he came home for like a night, we had dinner or something. And then I drove him to drop him off and he called me as I was driving back home. So it's about a 10-minute drive. And he goes, I left my wallet in the car. So then I turned around to go drop off his wallet, and where I dropped him off, which was right outside the dorms, he was standing there with, I'm not kidding, like 16 kids. And he introduced me to all of them. And he just was like plugged in and had community, and he's still friends with a lot of those kids. So it's the concern is your kid, yeah, you think he's going to fit and you've done all this sort of analyzing, but it still might not work. And man, when your kid's in the right place, then it's easy to sleep at night. So, that normal concern.
Absolutely. Juan, I feel like you were really resonating with those feelings. What were your maybe like excitement or worries? Obviously, you have your own excitement as an Oxy alum yourself, but what was really coming to mind for you on Joaquin's behalf?
Well, I really like the story. It was a beautiful story of just friendship, and Oxy and small community offers that definitely. For Joaquin and for being a parent, what was I excited and worried about? It was really the unknown, worried about what might happen. Just because he's out there all alone. I mean, really he's not, but as a parent, that might be a first thought. Excuse me. But also very excited that he's a young man who's going to experience a college life. He'll go into the Catholic religious studies there and have friends there. He'll have friends in computer science and math, his dorm mates, all things that worked out. And he applied for and would have been a residential advisor and still is doing that remotely.
Oh, awesome. And Paula, what about you for Isabel? Just concerns and things you were excited about for her starting at Oxy?
I have to say there weren't any concerns because those really had been addressed, and I'll apologize in advance. We were on the East Coast and we did 2 Oxy events, one in New York City and one in Brooklyn before she even went to college. So she already knew several people who were happy to be going and she clicked with everyone. And so before we even took her to campus, she already had a network of kids that she could call upon. So when we dropped her off, it just reminded me of something of a friend of mine told me that when she dropped her son off at college, it was a happy place. She knew he would do well. And we were happy for her. And it was the same for us. It was happy. There really weren't any concerns other than the girls were in a triple and they were trying to make three bunk beds next to each other in a small triple work. That was the concern.
Oh, I can imagine the engineering that was going into that. That was going to be like a double level room. Like they would have had a bed level and yes, absolutely. Well, we are very much looking forward to somehow connecting with all of our guests who do decide to apply or choose Oxy. So even if we can't offer those in-person things like the little events we had in New York that you got to be part of, definitely something I would say stay tuned. There will be more of that to come. But now that your students are all at Oxy, as you've said, clearly they are just doing well and loving it here. That's a big part of why you've chosen to volunteer with us as parents, certainly. But can you each describe like what your student has been involved in? Like what have they what have they connected to, maybe both in their academic experiences, but especially outside of academics, the friends that they've made, the clubs or things that they've participated in. And Paula, why don't you start us off?
Actually, I have to say Isabel's doing contact tracing this semester, and she is really enjoying that. It's fun to listen to her tell me about the technology platforms that they're using and the fact that they're doing translators in Mandarin and various Chinese, Cantonese, and all sorts of different languages. And that's been tough. That's a long day, but that's been really fun for her. She's joined some clubs, but really she's pretty academically driven. And as she likes to say, academics are her sports, and that's how she rolls. But she's met a lot of great kids there. I was fortunate enough to visit her in February before
Mhm.
COVID
Before we
became
shut
the
down.
reality it is. I brought her auntie over from the UK who got to come and see the campus. And Isabel introduced us to everyone on the floor. I must admit, we did find the co-ed bathrooms interesting for those of us who are of a
But you're
certain-
not in every residence hall. Like, don't worry. The first year
They're
residence hall
not,
is a little more
the
traditional.
kids will sort you.
Yeah.
It actually makes you happy because you just realize, does it
Mhm.
really matter anymore?
Mhm. Absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of smiles from you, Diane. Why don't you and Vince answer next? So what's been involved in?
Well, I just wanted to comment about I could not get over that at all. But the dorm floor, because I thought he was going to be in a dorm that was one row, and he was on the co-ed. And that was so strange, but it's no big deal. Not an issue at all. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, but Benjamin, he's had a job since he's a job on campus, not right now currently, but in I don't even know, the student, I don't know, he works with Linda Schrader, Courtney, I don't know.
Oh yeah, in the student leadership
activities.
involvement and community engagement office and the student activities center.
Yeah, so he does the finances, he helps with that. So he's worked like about 9 to 10 hours as freshman and sophomore year. He was on Senate. He was the representative for sophomore class. And I think he enjoyed it, but I don't think he's going to go in that direction. He's thinking this year, I think he wants to join in on the SUS fund, which I meant to look up exactly what that is, but he's talked about it, but it's a part of the whole,
Yeah, the sustainability fund through student government. So
Yeah.
student government has a leadership team that handles a budget specifically for projects to support sustainability on campus.
yes, and that's what he thinks sounds a little more up his alley. So he's hoping to do that. And then probably the biggest thing is he is a member of the Ultimate Frisbee Club, the boys club team. And that is just like, he's always played sports, but that brought him so much joy. It's a whole community of people. They traveled to different states to go to some club games. There's a girls team and a boys team. They'd go off and go camping and go to a tournament somewhere. He really loved it. He really was sad last year because they were going to go to nationals. And for the first time, it was kind of like that perfect storm when all everybody was there at the right time. And that was their year and it got canceled. And he was so sad when the seniors left because he became that was a really cool thing. He was friends with lower classmen and he was friends with the seniors and he got really close to a couple of them and they stayed through the summer. And then when they left, it was a pretty sad thing for him. So is that all he's involved in, I think?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there would be time for much else, but that sounds like an
And
awesome
school, of
student.
course. He's
Well, and yeah,
like, well, just like your daughter, school was the number one.
Well, and that's definitely something Oxy students have in common is like, this is a place where everyone like is so invested in their academics. That's certainly the advantage of like choosing what you want to study, that even when it's not in your major, like you're picking the classes you want to take and can really dive in. But Juan, what would you share about Joaquin? What has he been involved in on campus?
So interestingly enough, he found work right away, tutoring and mentoring young people there in Eagle Rock, which I was very excited about. He is and was super involved last semester, and I just don't know how he could do it. I just thought he was spread so thin, but he was doing so much, and that was great, whether it was helping out with Catholic or interfaith, helping out with the dorm. His love is theater, so doing theater. And then this semester, finding Sakna, sort of doing research, national conferences that he can present to virtually and work with professors and do those research papers. So that's what those are the opportunities he's found.
And what a good example of an Oxy student, a computer scientist doing research and theater at the same time, right?
I was gonna say, can I just say real quickly,
Yeah.
it being so close, lucky for us, we got to go see Urinetown last year. I don't know if Joaquin was in that or involved, but for everybody to know, the theater department is incredible. And the theater itself is so beautiful. And it was one of the best plays that we had. Was it a musical or play? I don't even.
It's musical. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
that,
We had never seen the play before. We had
it
heard
was
of
fantastic. So I don't know if he was involved with that, but they have a lot of their programs there. We also saw in looking for our daughter through the MAC program, all the different movies and things that were put together just blew us away.
the final thesis projects were these short films, and they were just
I wanted
incredible.
to nominate them for, like, I thought, I was like so frustrated that everybody in the world wasn't seeing them. They were fantastic. So even
Well,
though I was not involved in that at all, it was really interesting and impressive.
Well, I certainly couldn't have said that better. Thank you for the plug for the theater and the media arts and culture majors. I will say there is an event coming up with the theater department. So if that's something any of our guests have students who are interested in, check in with us in admission. We can help connect you there. Just a couple more questions then. We have some really good questions coming in from our guests that I want to make sure we have time for. But I do want to hear from you all as parents. How has your student changed since they went to Oxy? Like, how have you seen them grow, or what has been maybe the takeaway of their experience so far? None of them are finishing, none of them are seniors, like they're still kind of midway through this process, but I'm sure you have observed something along this way. And so it'd be great to hear about that. And I'm seeing a smile on your face, Diane, so I'm gonna come right back to you and Vince.
I don't know what you're gonna say, but there's a big change when your son or daughter goes away to school and then they come back. And we just didn't realize how much he really was needing that. They want to be on their own so much, or at least our kids do. And we're really close. We're a pretty close family. So I kind of wasn't expecting that they would want to be away from us so much. But the big change was I think Occidental, when they came home, I guess it was because of the pandemic, and we got a letter that said, we really encourage you to not smother your children, and they are supposed to be in college. They're college students. And so if they want to get up and eat at 10 o'clock at night and not have dinner at 5 o'clock, let them do that. If they want to sleep until noon, let them do that. If they, it was all of these things. And I thought that was something I really needed to hear. So it was perfect. And I shared that with all of our friends that were having college students coming home, because I think the biggest shock to us is he was ready. You might not think your son or daughter's ready. And sometimes there is a big transition. I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for Benjamin, we let him go. He knew nobody on campus. He refused to reach out to people prior to getting there, not even his roommate. And that's just kind of the way he was. And instantly we didn't hear from him. Vince said like 3 weeks, maybe he came home, but I think it was even longer than that. We never got phone calls, text, nothing. That might be a boy thing too. We're finding it a little differently with our daughter, but I guess the way he's changed was he just grew up a little bit in certain ways, not in all ways, but in certain ways. Is that what you would say? Or?
Yeah, he just wanted to sort of claim this next phase of his life, and we weren't sort of prepared for it. We thought there was going to be a transitional period, and it literally went from 0 to 100, where he wanted to be independent and sort of self-governing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then and making the adjustment when he came home after COVID. Ben, he loved it so much, so it almost made it harder because he knew what he was missing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the Christmas break was too long. Everything they like being, and all his friends, like Courtney, you said, a lot of people are from all parts of the country. There's nobody from Los Angeles that he hangs out with that goes to Occidental. So he's gotten a couple good trips out of that because of that.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, Paula, what would you share for Isabel's experience?
I think for Isabel's experience, she would tell you it's been really terrific, independent, meeting friends, doing things like going to Joshua Tree, camping trip for a weekend with friends, is meeting people from all over the country, meeting international students. I think Isabel's only negative is the fact that her dog could not come with her and he had to stay home. That's it. When she came home for COVID, that was tough because she really, really wanted to be at Oxy, and we were all busy trying to wrap our brains around what was happening. So and I have to echo Diane's comments about the letter, how handy that was to have kind of that guidance, because they were gone and then all of a sudden they're back and we're now doing school from home remotely.
Absolutely. And Juan, what about, how have you seen Joaquin grow since he's started at Oxy?
I've seen a new level of maturity, him wanting to do savings, planning for the future, taking more responsibility, him wanting to lead. And that's great, and giving him that freedom. In the home, he is at home. Sometimes I think I'm still a little too strict. So I, like the other parents, I need to just let him be on his own a little bit, because sometimes just the little things bother me. I don't know if it's leaving things around or whatever, but as a parent, I need to get over that and encourage him to blossom.
Absolutely. And we certainly are grateful and hopeful that Oxy is a big part of that blossoming. So I want to transition now and start addressing some of the questions we received in the Q&A. So if you haven't already, if you have a question for our panelists, please do put it into that Q&A box. I'm actually going to probably only ask one or two panelists to answer each question, just so we can move through as many. So panelists who join me, don't be offended if I don't pick on you, but also wave your hands frantically if you really, really want to contribute to one of these questions. But I'd like to start with just a question about being a college in LA, which we mentioned a lot of the advantages of. And I think there's a really good question that came in from a family about the safety of that, and like, how safe do students feel on campus? I'd love, Paula, if you wouldn't mind speaking about Isabel and what she would say about how she feels on campus, or you felt for her, just as the parent of a daughter. What would you say?
She feels very safe on campus. She feels very safe on Eagle Rock. Isabel has an ice cream habit from Scoops.
Yes.
And that's a mile there and a mile back. And so she does feel safety. I mean, she is a girl. We've all done the make sure people know where you're going, but she does feel very safe. And I mean, she has to be conscious of what she's doing, but I think people forget how big LA is. And Occidental has been mentioned previously by Diane and Vincent. It's its own little planet. So she feels safe.
And I just love that our campus safety is our campus safety. This isn't like a police department that we're contracted with. Like, these are our officers. They're members of our community. They're actually literally part of our student affairs division. They really know and get to know our students and try to help create not just a safe, but a supportive place. We also have like a lot of protocols in place for students to get rides in the evening, or people to walk with them, or to, make sure that they can get around. We don't want to deny that we're in Los Angeles, but I agree. And I also, living in the neighborhood, really appreciate how safe it feels around Oxy. Several people have asked questions about kind of how we would describe the student body at Oxy. And this is probably a question I'll ask more than one of you to answer. You can, and I think this is now thinking bigger than your student. So when you think about what your student describes, like the friends they make, who are the other kinds of students that they are meeting? And what does that feel like? One, I'd love to have you tackle this first, because also you, of course, have your own alumni perspective of like who you would have met at Oxy yourself. So how would you answer that? Like, what an Oxy student is like, both maybe from your alumni experience, but also from Joaquin's experience.
When we took Joaquin out to his dorm, essentially he was in a quad. There were a couple of, and I believe it was Val Young, a couple in his room. They shared a bathroom, and then a couple in the next room. And I was happy that he was in a quad, because immediately you've got three friends that you can eat with, that you can hang out with, that you can discuss things with. And I was happy about that. He did have a vehicle, so he was able to drive and take friends for drives, whether ice cream or whatever else. And that was nice. I believe he met a friend, and I don't know how this happened, which class, but they were doing TikToks together. And I believe she's from Hong Kong. And so it was nice that he was making lots of friends.
And Vince and Diane, what would you add to that? What does it sound like from what you hear an Oxy student is like?
Boy, it's a tough question for me because I think there's just such a wide variety. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's so true. I think Benjamin, he always said he found his people, which, you know, he wasn't always, he had a small group of friends. He wasn't always super social. And he kind of walked that line of being interested in like debate. He was big on the debate team, but he was also into sports. So he played soccer and volleyball and ultimate frisbee. So that was a kind of a weird line to walk sometimes in high school. And I think he found friends that kind of just let him be who he wanted to be in both ways. So they might be on the ultimate frisbee team, but they're talking about reading, you know, the quintessential On the Road, right, Jack Kerouac's,
Yep.
you know, so reading that. So I think even though they were athletic, there was also this sense of talking about, you know, books. A lot of, you know, he just got done reading Dune. And now he texted the other day, said he's into short stories. So that there's that kind of variety of people. And then, you know, I think that's who he kind of hung out. But then here's a great story actually to kind of put this all in one story. He's living with two guys now in an apartment off campus this year. And the two roommates came from the same high school, but they were not friends at all in high school. One was a track runner and one was in the Glee Club. And now they've been friends and rooming. This is now their third year together. And that kind of like when they come over here and make dinner, sometimes they cook, they, you know, they're very creative, but they're also, I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying what I'm just trying to say. It's kind of a wide variety. I think there's a big sport. There is a group that's more sports that he's not so into. I think there's you know, you'll meet people that are all into sports. And then he was also on the Senate. So I think he met some, a different variety of people in that regard too. It's just kind of just such a mix. And he really liked that.
I love that. And actually, that's always how I try to answer the question is that like, no one's in a box at Oxy. There's so many different types. And ideally you yourself are probably getting to explore multiple pieces like of yourself at the same time. And I think that's a good spread of what we talk about. A question came in about the transition from high school to college. And Paula, I'd love to come back to you for this just because Isabel is the one who went the farthest miles from where she was in high school to then starting at Oxy. What was her transition like? Like, how did Oxy compare to her high school? How did she like feel like she was able to, I think, just be successful in her first year? And then in this case, both like academically, but also socially, just starting in such a new place.
Well, Isabel went to 4 different high schools because we moved. We've moved 3 times in the last 5 years. So
she was an expert at transitioning, is what you're saying.
Yes. So I have to say her high school experience was not great. We'll leave it at that. So when we went to Oxy and we dropped her off at Oxy, we were beyond excited for her because she had selected Oxy. She was going to go home, i.e. California. She was out and about meeting lots of people. So she was like a butterfly who had been released from the cocoon and happy. So are there the moments though when you realize, particularly, you know, when she came home for Christmas, granted we live in Austin, Texas now, it's a way quicker flight. But we just kind of felt like that there was such a community that even if she got into a little bit of trouble, i.e. homesickness or miss my dog or whatever, that she would be supported. And she has really done nothing but thrive there. We've been very, very happy.
Oh, thank you for that. And then maybe Vincent, Diane, coming from a very different perspective of a much closer high school and the same high school, what was that a transition like specifically for Benjamin?
I remember at the freshman orientation, Rob Flott said, if you don't hear from your kid, it's good news.
That's our dean of students, so everybody knows. Yes.
Yeah, and we didn't hear from him for I think it was 3 weeks, and it was hard. It was really hard on me because we were really close, and so I was super homesick. Like I wasn't making dinner for him. I would see food like at Costco. Like I remember seeing the Rice Krispie treats at Costco, and like, Ben loved those, but I don't need to get them anymore. And I'm weeping in the middle of the aisle. But the transition was just freakishly seamless. And I think part of it was,
But it's okay if it's not.
Yeah,
it was really a good, I don't mean to put that, but I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, that wasn't for us.
but here's why I think it would, but this, I said, Ben, like, how did you meet all these people? As I was saying, and his 2 roommates, he didn't really talk to very much. So he said, and I said, well,
Freshman year.
freshman year, he's at Bell Young. And I said, well, wasn't that hard? Wasn't that uncomfortable? He goes, no, it made me go out and made the whole campus his living room. And he would meet new people, and he loved like eating, and he did love the food. Like the food was incredible, and he could try all these different things, and he thought it was free, because you could just go and eat. So I think it was an
easy transition for him.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes into another multi-part question we got, which was like, talk about the food. So I'm going to say that you already highlighted how good it is at Oxy. Like we cannot exaggerate this enough. Like the food is excellent. Another part of that question is like, what are the professors like? Maybe Juan, could you answer that from both your perspective and Joaquin's? So how would you describe an Oxy professor?
I'll go ahead and try. It's been a while, but yes, he definitely loves his professor. Sorry. So I just wanted to point out that there were about 2,000 people in his public high school, and then Oxy being about 2,000, so that was a good transition. In regard to the food, of course, there's the main, but then there's also other options, the cooler and other options. The professors, I've got to say that when I was there, really encouraged office hours, really encouraged engagement. And I'm still seeing that now, and Joaquin loves it. I mean, I gave the example of Saknas and him working with professors, working closely with professors on projects, on research, and I'm very excited about that. And I apologize, give me a minute. I got to power up my battery, so I'll be back.
Absolutely, no problem. And Paula, what would you say students say about stress levels? Does Oxy come across as a place where people are stressed all the time, or how do they describe that? What does Isabel say?
I think there's inherent stress in college, though, especially depending on what your academic course load is and how you're wired academically. I would say, though, that all of the professors have been, particularly, and I'm going to particularly address COVID, they've all been great. All of her professors, I mean, everyone's at home now and their kids are running in on Zoom meetings, or your organic chemistry teacher has asked you to get a certain kind of alcohol for the lab, and that alcohol is sold out because it's being used for hand sanitizer. So I'm amazed at the flexibility and the compassion and the accessibility of all of her professors, because I can't imagine one of her professors has 2 little kids at home, and I can't even imagine how much excitement that must bring to every day's work day.
Oh, absolutely. It's been really impressive and inspiring to meet with faculty during this semester, particularly, and just see how invested they are in their classes and their students, even though they've had to completely like relearn their entire curriculum themselves, let alone, teaching it to everyone else in a new way. Another part of that question was like, what do kids say about the administration? And so maybe Diane and Vince, back to you. Any observations you've heard of just like the people who work at Oxy and how Ben interacts with them?
We were introduced to Oxy from Linda Schrader, who was our son they were a high school family that we knew from high school. So we met everyone through there.
So he
Yeah,
already
kind of
people.
like we knew, we liked meeting the people, the administration, maybe more than Benjamin. I mean, but then when we would show, we went last year to the open house, or not the open house, the homecoming weekend, I guess. And we walked in and somebody came up and said, oh yeah, Ben goes to these meetings all the time, and he doesn't tell us that. So
Yeah.
he doesn't share that kind of information so much with us. But I know that he knows who people are, and we'll mention somebody and he'll say, he knows more about it, but he doesn't mention that so much to us.
Ben sort of keeps his experience to himself, and he doesn't really, and we're
And lucky him, we have his parents 4 miles away that get to know everybody on campus.
yeah. And so what Diane's saying is right. It's like, we're not really sure, but then a couple of people sort of said, hey, he's hanging out with a couple of really bright kids and he sees them over there playing Catan or something. So I think,
Yeah, I don't know, as far as he loves his professors, and he doesn't talk too much about that.
we actually are always encouraging him. Like, there's so much at Oxy. There's so much there. And we're always like, what about this? What about
We
this?
think he's not doing it, but then we find out he is. He
Yeah.
just doesn't share it with us.
And then Juan, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I would add that I was fortunate to be on a Zoom call with Dr. Elam, and I really enjoyed that to hear
New
him.
president. Mhm.
And Joaquin was also in a Zoom with Dr. Elam, and I'm sure he contributed and helped a lot. But also just the staff, whether financial aid, Vince over at financial aid, everyone's been very responsive and very helpful.
Thank you. I know that that's certainly our goal. So glad to hear that it comes across. We've had a couple questions come in and we're running out of time, but I do want to quickly talk about like being in LA and exploring LA. Like some of your students mentioned they have cars, most students at Oxy don't necessarily have cars, although cars are allowed on campus, totally fine. But how do your students get around the city and what do they do around the city? Paula, why don't you start for Isabel? Especially because she's living out here now with friends.
So Isabel likes the beach. I mentioned previously they did Joshua Tree. She also, one of her roommates does drive. So she does not drive herself. So she does the Bengal bus. She does Uber. She has her roommate that has a car, and then they walk. So she does all forms of transportation, and she likes to go pretty much anywhere but the museum with her mom.
Well, eventually maybe she'll come back around to that. Juan, what does Joaquin like to do around Oxy? And he did bring a car with him. So he's probably driving all his friends around.
Absolutely, the beach, all the great things that Pasadena has to offer, which I love. It's right next door. And In-N-Out Burger, something that we don't have out here.
That's true. That's a really big deal for our students coming to California from out of state. Vince and Diane, what about you?
Probably pretty much the same. Benjamin did not have a car last year, but usually you'll find someone that you start to hang out with that does have a car. And so I think they explored with somebody else's carpooling. Or just around campus, and Eagle Rock, you can walk to everything. So that was great. And this year he does have a car. And like I said, he has introduced us to restaurants. Burger Lord has taken over for In-N-Out. There's, and we agree it's delicious. Joy, which is right there real close on York. I mean, and then right in the beginning of him starting freshman year, we ran into a parent that said, oh yeah, I just saw Benjamin at a museum down in, I don't know where it was, downtown LA somewhere. I think maybe it was a Shepherd Ferry exhibit that he had gone to visit. It was like a warehouse. Yeah.
It was like a warehouse event thing.
So he goes to museums, they go to the beach. Yesterday, they said they went to Barnsdall, which is an art park around here, but it was closed. So they went up to the observatory. They spent some time in Griffith Park on hikes. There's some great hiking around here. Like Paula said, he's been camping Joshua Tree, Palm Springs. They've gone up the coast a little bit. That's where he went with his friends that were seniors. He drove up the coast and they camped. I don't know what kind of camping it was, but up in, along the beach. So there's definitely ways of getting away.
The reason why she said camped in such a strange way is he showed us where they camped because they couldn't find a campsite. So it was a high school in,
Yeah,
they parked the car in a high school in the,
he said it was a really beautiful campus.
and that's where they camped.
That's where they camped.
We are
So-
not endorsing this. We are just acknowledging these are what-
Exactly.
Exactly.
But no, there's plenty to do. And even when you're from here, I think he's enjoyed showing some people, but he's also learned more because they want to go exploring. So there's a lot of fun things to do. And nearby cities, you can go up to the mountains. You can, in the winter, there's snow. You can go to the beach. Lots to do. And there's always a way to get there. It seems they're going to have somebody that has a car.
Always. And I think that's really why Oxy is kind of the best of both worlds, like being a small community where you get to know each other, but being in this place where like all of this is happening all around you. So one last question before we go, and hopefully this is a very quick answer from each of you, but do you have any concerns about your student graduating in 4 years? I feel like I could answer it, but I want you all to answer it just because I think this is a valuable question that came in. Juan, you're already shaking your head. What do you think?
So good question. And maybe it's finance related or maybe there's a background on the question. But my son went into Occidental with a lot of AP courses. So he had a lot of courses under his belt, almost a sophomore going in. So for him, he gets to do a lot of the fun theater, music, and that type of technology that was already brought up, Mac or otherwise. Classes. No, I think that students are motivated, and with the help of professors and counselors, they can get it done in 4.
Yes, absolutely. That's certainly our commitment. Paula, what would you add to that?
I would say yes. Oxy's graduated in 4-year rate was extremely impressive. I suspect it will be. Even with COVID, we're still on track to graduate on time because we honestly thought that might be the spanner that might throw it off the semester, but it looks like we're still on track for 4.
Absolutely. And then Vince and Diane?
I think so too. We've never heard or thought that he wasn't going to graduate in 4 years. We kind of let him guide his academics. And I think he's right on course.
Well,
And he used some AP classes as well. I don't think that he used them to get out of certain classes, that he still had to take some things, but it did make him a sophomore pretty early on.
Right. Yeah, those APs count as elective credits. If you have AP or IB scores, something we can happily help out with and answer questions about from the admission perspective. So I know we are a little over on time, so I just want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us. But in case anyone missed the beginning of the session, before we go, I'd love to just ask each of you to kind of introduce yourself one more time, kind of in closing, just to say who you are, where you are from, who your student is, and just if you had one final thought for our audience today. We'll go back reverse. So Diane and Vince, do you want to start off?
Vince and Diane, our son's Benjamin. He's a junior at Occidental, living off campus this year, and he's an econ major. And I'm envious of where, I know it's an awful way to be looking for colleges, but it goes so fast. So I'm envious that you guys are just starting your journey, and just really, really try to don't make it bigger than it is. They're going to be fine, and they're going to find a place for sure.
Thank you. And Paula, from you?
Paula Ramey Perez, Austin, Texas. My daughter is biology pre-med, class of 2023. If I were to say anything, for those of us who can be quite cynical, I was almost thinking that it's just too good to be true. Surely it's not that good. Then the rankings came out. Then we met all these really terrific people, professors, parents whose kids were going to Oxy, and it really did live up to its billing.
And Juan?
Juan Larrañaga, I graduated Oxy in 95. My son Joaquin is a sophomore. And I just want to thank everybody for being on the Zoom call.
So thank you so much for joining us again. My name is Courtney Strickland-Bergen. I'm our Associate Dean of Admission. My colleagues in admission and my parent volunteers are all available to answer your continued questions. So we've actually shared links in the chat box of how you can get in touch with any of us. We cannot say thank you enough for joining us tonight, and we really appreciate your time and would be happy to hear from you. So have a great night, everyone, and thank you for being here.
You did a good job.